All right. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all those who have tuned into this session. I'm Ezrala and I'm your host for this virtual discussion. Adrenalin E-Systems Limited is a global HRMS firm offering digital HR solutions to organizations looking to transform their HR processes to keep pace with dynamic business needs. We are delighted to bring you Adrenalin Xchange, a platform for HR practitioners and thought leaders to share their learnings and thoughts. Attendees during the course of this session, if you have any doubts or questions, kindly key them in the questions panel on your right, and we will answer them during the Q&A session. I request Asif Mohammed, our Business and Global Delivery Head for Middle East and Africa, to introduce our distinguished panelists.
Thank you, Israela, and hello, good afternoon, and assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Adrenalin, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to Adrenalin Exchange. We at Adrenalin are very excited to bring to you discussion sessions on topics specifically in the area of people, HR, and its related technologies. We hope that the learning and insight shared through these sessions will be useful to you. You would have heard a lot about customer experience, often referred as CX, and how delivering a superior customer experience matters to organizations towards enhancing customer satisfaction and driving growth in business. Like CX, employee experience, often referred as EX, is equally important for organizations. Employees are an integral assets to organization. And now more than ever, it is vital for organizations to offer employees a memorable experience during their tenure. So today's topic is on employee experience as to the exact topic is why EX is excellent in for business. To take this discussion forward, I would like to introduce three eminent talent management leaders, Mr. Ramnath Venkatraman, ex-head of learning Noor Bank, United Arab Emirates, who will be the anchor for this webinar. And in conversation with Mr. Ramnath will be Mr. Ganesh Raman, OD Manager Petrofac, and Mr. Neel Vaidhyanatha, Head HR and Learning and Development, Shapoorji, Pallonji. So let's start an exciting session, and now I invite Ramnath to take the stage.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you, Asif. It gives me great pleasure to anchor Adrenalin Exchange. What an August gathering here in the month of September. The very word adrenaline infuses energy in me. And we are all here to have a positive exchange of practical, real-life business examples from our eminent panelists. As an HR and learning and development resource, I'm often asked, what is employee experience? Then I start wondering, because way back even in 2016, Deloitte had a global human capital trends report where they said that the mission of the HR leader is evolving from that of chief talent executive to chief employee experience officer. I started wondering from then on. And now I keep hearing this word again and again. I wonder, is it the plush office interiors? Is it the competitive salary package? Is it the birthday cake cutting events and team lunches? Is it the training programs at good resorts or some National Day gatherings, picnics, annual town halls, promotions, and bonus? Why wonder when we have our seasoned practitioners, Ganesh Raman and Neel Vaidhyanatha, to talk to us on EX? What it is, and most importantly, why EX, as Asif said, is good for your business. Before we get into it, let's have a quick poll.
So attendees, you will have a pop-up window flashing in about a few seconds. So we're going to leave the poll open for close to a minute. So kindly choose your options and click submit. A few more seconds to go. So those of you who haven't voted, you can vote. All right, I'm closing the poll now. Let's see the results. So Ramnath.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's indeed heartening to see that 63% organizations are actually EX is being discussed. And of course, the fact that 38% it's not being discussed gives so much scope for this wonderful concept. As in any discussion, we have to set the stage. And what better way to set the stage than by asking our panelist, Neel Vaidhyanatha. Neel, how do you define employee experience?
Thank you, and good afternoon, all. To me, employee experience, or EX, constitutes the entire journey the employee takes within the organization. So this includes pretty much everything from pre-hiring as a candidate to post-exit interactions and everything in between. So EX is about optimizing every touch point that an employee comes in contact with. It's about creating an integrated experience, not just disjointed events. Integrated experience that feels seamless to the employee and holistic at every stage of his work. More importantly, I see EX, or employee experience, as an employee-centric and bottom-up approach where their experiences are designed not by some individual, by employees themselves, in such a way that A, the workflow and processes are better aligned with their day-to-day work, and B, their overall experience, or experiences rather, remain positive. So this is how I would define employee experience.
Oh, thank you, Neel, for that. I used to work with Grindlace Bank in India. It became ANZ Grindlace, and I cannot imagine that we are about 300 of us who are still in touch with each other even after 30 years. And that is something so unique about an organization which has kept us bonded. Ganesh, my next question to you is, could you please take us in your own inimitable style, the typical employee journey and the core touch points?
Thank you very much, Ramnath. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this conversation. I think this is something that most people who are attending or listening into us would be very familiar with. It's the employee journey that pretty much all of us have experienced. If we have worked for an organization at any stage in our lives, we would have gone through these stages, as you can see. Neel pointed out, the experiences begin pre-hiring. So even while you're searching for opportunities or you're searching for information about an organization, that's where the experience of an employee or potential employee begins. Very straightforward, as you can all see on the screen. Pre-hiring to hiring, over to onboarding. Once you're in the company, naturally, how well you're engaged and performing, development, retain, and then of course depart. And nowadays, even after departing, what is the kind of experience that a company is able to provide is what holistically, as Neel pointed out, is employee experience. So there's ample opportunity and at the same time, ample challenges, because at every touch point, if we are able to optimize the employee's experience, then holistically, we might succeed in creating a positive employee experience. So there's so much to think about when companies put down their processes, their protocols, their systems, their tools, the training that they provide their own employees, and all of that contributes to that employee experience. So over the years, even though employee experience has been talked about for many years, it's only now gathering steam. And I think that's happening because there are tremendous changes, both in terms of the workforce that's coming in that we hire today. The nature of the work itself has changed quite a bit, and companies have had to respond to it. So I think we'll see a lot more happening in this space in employee experience. And COVID-19 has only expedited the whole thing. It's just brought forward many things that we would have perhaps done 10 years down the line, and we need to do them now. So I think every touch point, as Neel pointed out, is extremely important and crucial.
Thank you, Ganesh. So these are, this particular slide kind of gives you every little touch point, and each one can be fleshed out in more detail, from the searching to hiring, onboarding, developing, retaining, and departing. For me, it's very nostalgic, because the experience of being a founder member of a bank, which was the Noor Bank, which was initially started off as a global Islamic bank, and then came recession, and how things changed, then how we got over it and became operationally profitable and really did very well, so well that Dubai Islamic Bank decided to take us over. So, and in the entire 10 years, when I look back, I've seen that these touch points initially used to be like in silos, and then gradually we started integrating them. So my next logical question would be to Neel, because we've always heard this word called employee engagement, and now comes employee experience. Now, are they step brothers, step sisters? Are they cousins? What are they? Over to you, Neel.
Yeah. The short answer, if you ask me whether employee engagement and employee experience are one and the same, the short answer is no. There are two different things. It is important for us to make a distinction between the two. Many companies, as you said in your introduction, Ramnath, many companies get EX confused with offering enticing perks, giving pool tables, yoga classes, royalty cards, etc., etc. But employee engagement is more of an emotional commitment your employees have towards the organization, as well as its larger goals. It is about the extent with which they feel passionate about their job, their roles, the connection they have with their colleagues, their friends, their managers, their subordinates, the entire work community, as well as the commitment they can demonstrate towards their role, putting their best efforts forward, best efforts towards the organization. So that is about how engaged an employee could be. If it's an engaged employee, he or she would be demonstrating all these traits. On the other hand, when you talk about employee experience, it is the totality of all the experiences one has throughout the employee journey, just like you saw earlier, right from hiring to exiting and everywhere in between. So employee experience, the two are closely linked, of course, engagement and experience. If I put it shortly, engagement is only one of the many outcomes or benefits that come from your investment in better employee experience. So addressing an employee experience is essentially a solution, whereas the levels of engagement that you see from employees are an outcome. So a company interested in enhancing their employee experience, or EX, should essentially focus on improving the overall quality of their experience within the organization and even beyond.
Oh, thank you very much, Neel. You know, the totality part is what really attracts me, and it means that there has to be bonding, there has to be communication, and this is something I feel is very critical. Otherwise, as each one, you know, would be just working in their own cubicles and silos. So Ganesh, you briefly mentioned about it earlier, but I would like you to just dwell on again the nature of work. How has it changed? And in particular, any specific changes that you've seen during this pandemic? And if possible, since both of you have dealt with blue and blue collars and you know, white collar jobs and people, would you like to also point out something in that regard?
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody recognizes that over the last few years, you know, the nature of work across all industries has changed significantly. If you look back 6 months, then you will see that there's been exponential change in some industries more than others. But you know, even 20 years ago, industries were changing, the nature of work was changing, how people approach work had begun to change, especially in the information technology industry and related industries. I think they were pioneers in flexible working hours, working from anywhere, anytime, making people available, services available 24/7, etc. So it's not something that started just recently. I think easily about turn of the century, it had already begun. And even before that, you know, when in the initial days, obviously product was king. So you brought a product into the world and everybody consumed it, and companies were product centric for many, many decades. Then slightly they started changing and became consumer centric. So companies started to understand what is it that consumers want. Now, we are at a stage where employees are consumers of the workplace. Employees are consumers of the workplace culture, the workplace experience. What is it that the company has to offer? So it's not just the product and services, but it's the part of life that companies are now influencing, right? And that's how employees are beginning to see their employment. So, you know, the 9 to 5 has gone out of the window, pretty much dead now. Flexible hours, autonomy is something that people want a lot. And a lot of this is driven by the nature of the workforce that is coming into play now. So any large company that you go into, you'll find a multi-generational workforce. So you'll have people, you know, born in the 1950s, working alongside people who were born just about 15, 20 years ago, right? And the needs of these two individuals are very, very different. The way the new generation's approaching work itself is very different. In fact, the other day, I remember back in the office, which was a few months ago because of COVID, I was in the cafeteria and I was listening in to about 3 or 4 young engineers that we had recruited, talking about planning what they're going to do over the weekend. Now, if I think back, you know, my plans were centered around, okay, what movie to go to, or who do I catch up with, or do I have a sporting event that I could go to? And these young engineers were talking about, should we make a trip to Amsterdam? Maybe we could combine it with Switzerland. This weekend I'm going to do Europe, but next weekend I think I'm going to go Jordan. Now, they don't look at, life has changed completely. Priorities have changed completely. Whereas my father's generation, for example, if they had a job, they're stuck to it forever. They couldn't think of anything else other than providing for the family, saving up for a rainy day. That's out of the window now, because this generation, I believe, wants to earn, wants to spend, wants to live. Their priorities are very different. So they also approach work as just one little aspect about their life. So it's not life completely for them. So they want to experience other things. They want to experience travel. They want to experience entertainment. They want to experience spirituality. They want to experience hundreds of other things. And work happens to be one component. So I think there are lots of other changes. It'll take the rest of this webinar just talking about the amount of change that we have seen over the last 10 years or so. COVID, of course, has speeded up these things. I mean, one of the biggest lessons that my organizations learned is, easily about 60% of the workforce could have worked from home even 10 years ago. We are able to do it effectively today because the situation has forced us to do it. But we are learning that we could have done this 10 years ago. We could have saved thousands of dollars. We could have saved real estate. We've got 2 huge buildings operating in Sharjah, massive buildings. And we don't need them because 60% of our work can actually be done sitting wherever we want. Even engineering design work can be done wherever we want. Technology has enabled collaboration. MS Teams, Zoom, these were tools available even 5 years ago. They were available in my company too, but we didn't bother. We never bothered to go on Teams. We never bothered to converse. We never bothered to do virtual sessions. No. Today, we realize engineering could have been done on virtual platforms without having to come into the office, without struggling. So all of this is change. And I think going forward, it's only going to rapidly go in the same direction. More flexibility, more autonomy, anywhere, anytime, and people will be able to pick and choose what they want to do, what they want to contribute. Jobs will change. The structure of jobs will change. Contracts have already started changing in my company. We have started offering people contracts about the number of hours they want to work, flexible hours, from regular employees to contract employees and consultant contracts, because we realize that people want that flexibility. They also want that autonomy. They want to do other things. They don't want to be stuck in the office for 12 hours. They want to have the freedom to go out and do things. And I think this is a trend which is not going to change. It's just going to continue to do. So companies have to rethink how they do design of jobs, design of the workplace, design of their HR policies, protocols, design of essentially what experience you want to give to your employees. So plenty of change and all good change, I think, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ganesh. So Neel, again, I'm wondering when it comes to such, difficult climates, especially, and the weather is so hot, how would it also affect the laborers who are toiling it out in the sun? So would these also be considered in some way?
Yeah.
Or the work or the show must go on?
Unfortunately, there are certain industries, which includes the current industry that I am in, construction and infrastructure, because there is no remote working possible, because you have to do the job on the site. The building has to come up, right? So you need the workforce. In fact, we were one of the few industries, even during the lockdown, we were exempted from, any lockdown, because the show had to go on. People had to, the large part of our workforce works on the site. So be it the project director, the project manager, construction manager, engineers, the laborers, the foremen, supervisors, subcontractors, everybody has to work on the job. So in a way, some of these industries haven't seen that kind of massive transformation in terms of work practices or changes. But yes, technology has also played a significant role. Like Ganesh said earlier, many of the meetings which were done by default face-to-face have now been replaced by MS Teams or Zoom meetings. People are also realizing that they are spending way too much time in meetings. That comes into light mainly when you're in online meetings. That is when you realize I'm wasting a lot of time, which could have been easily addressed over an email or a quick conversation with somebody. So that kind of a change is also coming in terms of other functions, office-based functions. But at the work, these things have not really had much of a change, and are, people still toiling under the hot sun, are facing similar challenges. That hasn't changed. But in a way, yes, there are opportunities for us to still improve that experience for those blue-collar workers and understand what their critical needs are.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Ganesh,
I think even with my company, Ramnathji, there's a large chunk of our business which is involved in oil and gas construction.
Correct.
And I completely second what Neel has just said. The one thing that we have also noticed is that even this workforce, even though physical labor obviously, and they have to toil in the sun and all that, even this strata of workforce is now more tech savvy. They are all good at using smartphones. We are able to communicate better simply because we have now access to them directly over their smartphones. We are able to provide more education. We are able to extend more services to them, especially around safety and security, etc. And on sites, in fact, our company is collaborating with Accenture to provide all of these individuals with GPS trackers. So, because obviously construction sites are huge, and if you go into the desert for an oil and gas process plant, they stretch across kilometers and kilometers. And it's important to keep them safe, and therefore it's important to know where they are at all times, etc. So, technology is obviously assisting, enabling some of these things. But yes, essentially their skills haven't changed much. They're still building stuff. But the way the environment is created for them, the employee experience again is changing. For the first time, our company is able to demonstrate to them how seriously we take safety and security for them. We are able to give them trackers, and we are able to get to them in less than 5 minutes in case of an emergency. They understand why it's important to carry it, and they feel more secure about these things. So again, it comes back to the kind of experiences you can create using the tools that are available today. And I think digitalization is an excellent opportunity to create impressive employee experiences.
So my question, Ganesh, in this regard is, so the fact that we've woken up now, that means it could have really, our businesses could have done better because of cost savings, or do you think it could have done better because of better productivity?
I think, there's an adage which I read almost 20 years ago, and anybody in HR would have obviously come across this. You'll remember it as soon as I start mentioning it. Experiences lead to attitudes. Attitudes lead to behaviors, and behaviors lead to outcomes. This is an age-old adage, especially in HR circles, training circles, facilitation circles, etc. And couldn't be truer, right? Because the kind of experience a company creates for its employees is going to drive the attitude they bring to the table, and that attitude is going to change or maintain certain behaviors, and direct relation to the outcome. Now, great experiences generally translate into greater happiness, greater satisfaction, and therefore greater passion towards whatever we are doing for the company. and companies that are addressing it are clearly seeing that benefit. Depending on my experience with my company, I contribute either 120% of me, or 100% of me, or 80% of me, or 50% of me. If my experiences aren't good enough, then every morning I get up and I think, oh dear, I have to spend another 10 hours at the office. Yeah, or what else can I do to not go to office? Absenteeism obviously increases, retention issues happen. So I think good experiences generally translate into better productivity, better efficiency, which obviously has a direct line to the bottom line. There are no two questions about it, in my opinion.
And Neel, somehow this particular question is, bringing up such wonderful thoughts, because Ganesh also said, and I'm sure in your previous organization, in this organization, you have contractual staff. Tell me one thing: how does a contractual staff feel the same belonging and involvement, or should one necessarily have to be on the direct payroll of the company to have the same feeling of engagement and experience? And how do we get this synergy?
See, again, the previous years, the perception was that every contractual staff, every temporary staff wants to be a permanent employee. Like Ganesh pointed out earlier, that is not the case anymore. People actually are opting for contractual work more and more because they have the flexibility to do other things during their time. So from that traditional point of view, yes, contractual staff sometimes do not get the same benefits as that of a typical full-time employee. But in terms of their experience, I don't think organizations are discriminating in terms of their experience, because how I treat contractual staff is going to be similar to how I treat a permanent staff. Their benefits and other things, perks may vary, but in terms of the experience, it is going to be the same. If I treat my subcontractors with dignity, with respect, and also make sure that they are performing to their expected standards, then the outcome from those contractual staff is also going to be equally good. So I don't think there is any discrimination that we should be doing, but yes, there is going to be a difference in levels of their expected benefits.
Thank you. I can also kind of pitch in from the banking side. Is the first time we had a BPO, so the call center, the operations, the credit, so many things were moved to Concentrix Bangalore, and I was obviously one of the key members who had to go and involve them. So one question I would ask is, who do you work for? Initially, from saying I work for Concentrix to say that I work for Noor Bank was a paradigm shift. And I said, unless you feel that, your customer is not going to get that same feeling. So
yeah, we had similar examples, because Danata is an organization. It is a ground handling company. It represents multiple airlines. If you look at Dubai International Airport, or Terminal 1 in particular, where many airlines operate from, but the check-in staff that is interacting with the customer is actually a Danata staff, but they are representing, let's say, Singapore Airlines or Thai Airways or Gulf Air or any other airline. But when they are with those customers, it is very challenging for them, because in that shift, they are representing let's say South African Airways or Kenyan Airways. The next shift, they need to wear the different hat, not physically, but mentally, because they are representing Singapore Airlines. So that is a dichotomy, and most of these are permanent staff of Danata. But if you ask them, whom do you work for, often you will get varied answers, just like you said.
Oh, wonderful. I just feel like taking this topic over and over again, but I'm sure we will have some good spillover in the other questions. Is there a time for another poll?
Yes, all right.
Wow, that's a nice question.
So attendees, it's going to be on for another a minute. So you can book. Another 10 seconds maybe. Only 77% have voted. All right, I'm closing the poll now.
Suspense.
Interesting.
I'm Ganesh and Neel. I'm wondering what this could be telling us.
Yeah.
It's
See, in
got
my view, yeah, because there is HR, there's functions, senior management, but more towards HR. Maybe perhaps because most of the audience today are representing HR. I don't know, but in my view, EX can be owned by HR. However, it is not HR's responsibility alone, because HR leaders must be able to leverage the experience of business leaders, senior management, functional areas like operations, marketing, product development, sales, frontline staff, and workers. So they can enable it, they can co-facilitate it, they can even lead the initiative, but they cannot be the only owners of employee experience. Interestingly, Ramnath, you spoke about the 2016 report from Burson or Deloitte.
Yeah, Deloitte, yeah.
If you look at today, there are organizations like Airbnb. They have done away with the HR department altogether, and they have actually created a role for employee experience as a department, which is led by an employee experience director or EXO. So it's interesting that we feel responsible for employee experience, but we can't own it completely, in my view. It has to be.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Very, very true. Because see, this is the irony, because the very word human resources is people expect this particular unit to have the humanity and the humaneness and approachability, etc. Whereas why should it be left to one unit or one particular segment? So Ganesh, my question to you was, do senior leaders need to do something with EX, or they leave it, delegate it to the rest of the world and sit quiet?
Yeah, the way I see it is employee experience is every employee's responsibility, right? And unless you work with that mantra, you are never going to be able to create great experiences within the organization, right? The employee has to be hand in hand with whoever has who manages the strings of the purse, who has the decision-making authority in the organization. So I see a role for pretty much everyone. I see a role for senior management to sponsor something like this, to steer something like this, to be visibly campaigning for something like this. I love the example of the Dubai government, and I think I speak about it in plenty of forums. His Highness has created a ministry for happiness. Happiness as a goal we have all talked about, thought about. In fact, a few years ago we used to think about satisfaction. Customer satisfaction was at all. I mean, that was the pinnacle of going into customer-centric processes and protocols and things like that. But now all of that's changed. They're looking at happiness, and they're looking at happiness even within the government sector. And they have a ministry for it, and they have a minister for it. So that kind of a focus has been provided by the top man. So it's not something that's been cooked up by just another minister, or it's not an offshoot of an existing ministry. It is something that has been publicly decreed by His Highness, and he has made somebody accountable to go ahead and ensure that our happiness index is upwards, moving upwards. So I think a lot has to do from the senior management point of view. They have to put in place that intent. They have to demonstrate the intent. As an EXO in Airbnb, there needs to be somebody who is the point person for this. But naturally, it's not a one-man job, right? So everybody who is involved is responsible for creating experiences for everybody else. Now, an employee's experience can even begin in far as where the parking lot is. If I don't go to a restaurant if I don't get ample parking, for example, right? We've all been there. We don't like to go to places where we can't park comfortably and walk into the premises easily. We won't go to a mall where we know we won't get parking on a Friday in the Middle East, for example. At my office, where is the parking lot? Have I got to park 1 kilometer away, 2 kilometers away? Do I get up to the front door and get off? All of that contributes to employee experience. So every function is responsible. All managers are responsible. All employees are responsible. Employees are responsible to create the positive experience for their fellow employees. So peers are responsible, accountable. Subordinates are responsible, accountable. Your superiors are responsible, accountable. So I think it's 360 degrees. No one person can be held, solely responsible for it, is my opinion. But yes, as Neelji pointed out, HR could own the initiative. Senior management could sponsor it. Functions can enable it, deploy it. HR could provide the framework for it. HR could provide the indicators of success for each of the functions. Functions could deploy it. Senior management could pull up people once in a while to check how we are doing. So everybody has a role to play. So I think that's probably also why we saw that poll, all three areas being favored. All of them have a role to play, I think.
Actually, it was quite heartening for me to see that, it has got spread. Otherwise, sometimes, such questions tend to get a weightage on just one. And I'm happy that people have acknowledged, that all are important. Actually, from the banking side, again, I used to quiz people saying who's in charge of service quality. And then people initially, they would say the service quality team. And then who's in charge of compliance team. So it doesn't work like that. Each and every one, right from the the one who's welcoming the customer at the branch up to the CEO is important to have this experience. And it was nice that Asif had already talked about the concept of customer experience and employee experience. So Neel, you've been in an industry, Emirates Airlines, and so you have to do adequate justice to this bit. What would you like to share with us?
Right. So employee experience definitely has an impact on the experience your employees create for your customers. So if good employee experience is sustained by your organization, it would definitely result in better business success. So in the past, if you actually look at what influenced a typical customer, I'm talking about, let's say, the last decade or so. Up until then, customers used to be influenced more and more by your company's product or service, and to a certain extent, the company's reputation as such. So if it's a Tata product, I would be very, very confident to buy that as opposed to an XYZ product. Now, on the other hand, as a typical employee, one would be influenced primarily by the pay scale, the benefits, and the job titles. But today, if you look at it, the scenario has changed quite drastically. Most organizations are facing this in terms of both the experience of the customers as well as the experience of the employees are taking center stage. So today, the influence is more about the experience, but for both the customers as well as employees. So if I compare and contrast, if I look at a typical customer today, they're influenced by, number one, brand reputation. Employees, ditto. They also are influenced by brand reputation. Many of the customers are also looking at what the company does for the society. So CSR, it's another factor that many of them are influenced by. And when you look at the employees, again, many of the employees are potential employees are looking at the CSR and also, the greater meaning and purpose that the company stands for, or the senior leadership of the company stand for. Today, customers are influenced by user reviews of the products and services, whether it's on social media or on different, web channels. Whereas staff reviews, on the other hand, employees are also influenced by reviews from ex-staff, current staff discussing certain things on social media, and it can become quite viral, positively as well as negatively based on their experiences. So if you look at exit interviews or look at sites like Indeed and Glassdoor and comparably, the past experiences of employees count the most in terms of getting a 4-star or a 5-star or a 1-star. So employees are also, potential employees are also looking at these reviews before deciding to apply for a role. So and look at customers' point of view. Today, customers are influenced by the delivery channel, the flexibility that you offer in terms of your products or services. Similarly, an employee also is looking at the work environment, the flexibility. And customers look for personalization today, so are the employees. Employees are looking for more and more personalization, and also how they are treated. Customers are also interested in how they are treated both in the face-to-face medium, with the physical medium, when they are offering, let's say, Emirates, they could go to the airport, how they are welcomed and how they are treated in person at the airport, as well as how they are treated on the phone or on the email. What is the kind of a tone that is being given out to them? Similarly, employees also, they also are influenced by how they are treated by the organization, what kind of a learning opportunities or flexibility that is being given to them, growth opportunities, etc. I'm just giving these, comparing these two, customer experience and employee experience, just to drive home the point that they're very, very similar. Today's employees also, you need to start looking at their experiences, because that is going to help you with your business results. So it's important for HR leaders who are here to actively start looking at the data that is coming out of sites such as Glassdoor or Indeed, and do something with it, because there is a lot of insight that you can gather from that and improve your employee experience so that you attract better talent and you can also retain them. So Ramnath was asking for some of my experiences from Emirates point of view, but there was some positive and not so positive experience in terms of some of the touch points. Very recently, actually, not recently, maybe 2 years ago, I was looking for a particular job role online, and it took me to this, it was from a reputed global healthcare company. So it directed me to apply on the company's recruitment site. So I first entered, I went there, I just entered my name to register and my email ID, and went to the next, clicked on the next button. It went to the next page. Then I realized it's a very, very long, huge document that would take ages for me to complete. So I thought, okay, now it's not the time. I would come back and revisit it the next day. But to my surprise, as I logged out of that and came out, I got an email immediately telling me that they have rejected my application. The typical one, reject message. You have gone through your credentials, your CV, blah, 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 and we regret to inform you that you have not been accepted. What does this tell you as a potential employee about the organization? Yeah, it may very well be a technical glitch, I don't know. But I had barely just entered my name and my email ID, nothing else. I haven't even uploaded my CV. So to get an immediate response from the company saying that your application has been not accepted, what do you think I would do? Would I go back and revisit that site the next day and apply for a job? Highly unlikely, right? So that was one experience that I had even before joining the organization. Another experience that I can think of is a few years ago, probably 18 years ago, when I was in the US. I was part of this small organization, 400 plus employees in Atlanta. So in my first week, I'm recounting my experience in the first week. So there was this beautiful welcome message hand signed by the CEO, which was welcoming me on my desk. But guess what? It was addressed to a person called Ramon Balaska. I don't know who he was. Later, I figured out that that Ramon Balaska is a project manager who sits in another office, and he joined some 6-7 months ago, right? So then came the next shocker. I started getting these HR-related documents from the HR departments, and all these letters were addressed to one Miss Christina. So when I went and said, this is a mistake, and I started correcting them, then I started getting all the subsequent letters addressed to dear sir / madam. So much for personalization. So it is a fact that many cabin crew in Emirates are looking at these kind of experiences. These are recounted by people who have left the company in order to join. Even CSR is something that they really, really highly value. And it's important for us to start giving that experience right before you join, and then take care of the rest of the experiences as an employee.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. Such a wonderful topic, because both are inextricably intertwined, as they say. One thing that I know is about Ritz-Carlton, where the tagline says, "Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen." So, that's the kind of prestige and importance that you give to your staff. And apparently their dining room is as good as any restaurant in the hotel. So just imagine what that internal customer feels. So that internal customer experience is so critical to giving an external customer experience. And there's a direct correlation between service and top line and bottom line results. Ganesh, you want to say something from your industry, or we have to move to a poll, Israel, after this? Or why don't we take the poll and then, Ganesh, you could think about it? I could have done the poll earlier, but why not? Let's see how it fares now.
All right. The poll is on now.
Yeah, this is very much connected with the previous poll.
Another 20 seconds, maybe. All right.
Yeah, let's see. Wow. What intrigues me is the fact that in some organizations, the senior executives haven't possibly internalized or haven't understood, or I think they are so much concerned about the top line and the bottom line, I suppose, that they just don't seem to appreciate the importance of EX towards that. And this neutrality bit is also very intriguing. But the fact that 55% have said that it is important means these are the organizations which are looking at sustainability. So Ganesh, as we dive, now it's the turn when we actually start diving deep. So whereas purpose, culture, and environment are key components of EX, from your experience in organization development, could you please elaborate on the purpose and the culture bit? I'll leave environment to Neel, and then of course you could always add your 2 bits.
Sure.
Sure. I think let's start with purpose for what, right? So we are trying to build a positive employee experience, and every touch point, if you look at, is an opportunity. It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity also to improve people's experiences. We all remember moments of truth, right? And that's again a very old adage we use, and every moment counts when you're putting together an employee's experience. So people, do they find their jobs and the time that they spend in an organization purposeful or not? How should companies align their organizational goals and their organizational purposes to what the individual's contribution is? I think that is extremely important. It needs to be addressed. A lot of good companies do a great job of communicating what the organizational goals, objectives, etc. are, and they do it through multiple media. They do it relentlessly. They keep making the connection stronger and stronger as you go along. So, for example, at our place, at the start of the year, it is very clear what are the specific strategies and the specific goals for the company. And that is aligned all the way down to the last man in the company through a series of goal setting exercises. So we call them scorecards. And it trickles down right from the top. And I can today look at my scorecard and see very clearly which objectives of the company am I contributing to. Okay. It goes a long way in creating that sense of connectedness, sense of contributing purposefully, sense of meaning to the job that I'm doing. So every morning I'm not thinking, I'm doing a useless job, or my boss doesn't find me useful enough, or am I contributing? Am I being looked at? Are people going to reward me, recognize me for what I'm contributing, etc.? So I think there needs to be that strong linkage and alignment between what is the purpose that the company is wanting to achieve and what individually we can contribute towards it. Our company is also very highly into community CSR and in-country value targets. In-country value targets mean we are responsible to contribute towards the economy of the countries in which we operate. So that drives a lot of our processes within the different functions to act in a specific manner. So we recruit locally in the locations that we work. We purchase locally. We abide by obviously all the rules and regulations of that country and provide for their workforce what is expected according to the laws of that company. We spend millions on training that workforce, because in the end, when we exit that project after having built the process plant, we make sure that it's a local workforce which is able to operate it and maintain it. So there's a lot of investment that we do, right? And all of that contributes to me feeling good about the brand that I'm working for. I feel good about working for the company that I'm working for. When my company contributes to the community, it does CSR work in India, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East. Every other month, we are doing campaigns for the underprivileged, etc. All of that ticks a box in the head. Say, okay, I'm in the right place. I want to be in this place. This is the kind of organization I want to work with, right? So finding purpose in what you're doing and how that relates to what the company is trying to do, right? And that linkage is very, very important. Culture is obviously very complex, but there's a simple ways of building culture. And it starts, I think, with the senior management deciding what kind of a value system they want their employees to abide by, right? And what is it that they want to inculcate. And at our place, for example, some of the values that we talk about pretty much on a daily basis. Number one is safety for us, because we are in the construction industry. Saving lives, zero accidents, zero incidents, very, very important. Innovation is very important. We want people to think about innovation. Being driven to deliver is very important to us. So it's that attitude that we want to inculcate, that you have to keep delivering, do whatever it takes to deliver, be responsive. So client wants something, be responsive, find a solution, be creative, get it done. Cost effectiveness, quality consciousness. These are two others. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all of these is because every aspect of that employee journey can be influenced by these value systems. So if you pick up the recruitment team, for example, or the recruitment function, they would inculcate and put in these values in their processes and protocols, ensuring that the cost of hire, for example, or the cost of the workforce itself is optimized. They are driven to find innovative ways of hiring people, innovative ways of locating resources, etc. So every function and every part of the company, when it starts to utilize these values and demonstrate them, you automatically start to build a culture. Then when somebody joins the organization, they know on day one, safety is number one. I need to be absolutely alert and I need to keep everybody around me safe. Very, very important, for example. And culture is also driven by people. Yeah. What kind of people do you bring in? Again, if you're driven by your value system, if you're driven by what the senior management wants to build as an organization, then you will bring that kind of people in. So it's very funny. There's we look at our organization, we look at certain departments. We have certain departments which are full, 95% filled with people from one particular region of India, for example. We have another department which will be filled with another region completely. Those of you who are listening and who might be familiar with India, let me bring it alive for you. So our civil department is full of people from Bengal. 95% are Bengalis. Our instrumentation team is 95% from Maharashtra. So we have Marathis in it. Our mechanical engineering team, some of you would already guess, is 95% Tamilians. Yeah, from Tamil Nadu. Why? Because the culture is built by the head of the department. He brings the kind of people that he is most comfortable with. They have a language going, which everybody understands. There's more camaraderie. There's more collaboration. They feel united. They're all driven together by a common purpose and being part of the same, small part of the world. And that's how you need to look at a global organization. So when you become a global organization, how do you homogenize? How do you make sure that everybody is following the same set of behaviors? They're all, breaking down these silos, because we also have values like collaboration. So the civil department has to collaborate with mechanical. There are no two ways about it. And they do on a project, obviously. So what is it that you want to drive as a culture has to be driven through the value system. And I think values and culture will invariably create 90-95% of an employee's experience. If the culture is to zip up and not openly talk and be conservative about your ideas and command and control, for example, then that is the kind of culture that will pervade. But if the code of the organization says that we will appreciate diversity, we will promote inclusiveness, we will allow for open-minded dialogue, we will openly discuss ideas and be creative, and we are expected to collaborate, then anyone who joins the organization starts to behave in that particular manner. And if you put in the right behaviors, you get the right outcomes. So, and it's a struggle, obviously. Companies take 20, 30, 50 years to build cultures, right? But it starts with senior management. It starts with them setting, the goalpost, put in place the building blocks, your value system, your culture, your behaviors that you want to imbibe, and make sure that everybody who's joining is bought into it. So our new joiners on day one do induction, which takes them through all of this, and it takes them through a code of conduct. So no matter which part of the world you come from, there is a Petrofac code of conduct. And you, as long as you're employed with Petrofac, will behave in this particular fashion. So managers are put through what we call the pathway program. Right? This is the Petrofac way of managing and leading. So all managers in the company are targeted to understand the DNA of the company. How do you manage people? What you can do and what you cannot do. So if an outsider comes in, a stranger comes in from another company, from another culture, he needs to understand how Petrofac behaves, right? And that is where you'll see all these multi-generational conflicts come up. And the only way to address all of these is, what's the common standard? And there is a standard to behave, there is a standard to lead, there is a standard to manage. And all of that contributes to a holistic employee experience. And why it's important is, let's say I'm working for Asif as my manager, and Azraela is working for you, Ramnath. If Asif is, all that open-minded and promoting me and listening to me and wants to give me opportunity and all of that, whereas, Azraela gets to meet you once in a year during appraisal time, and then you tell her everything that she has done wrong, and there's no scope to improve. We were all working for the same company, but we're having two different experiences. Now, the only way Asif and you will behave the same way is if I hold you responsible to abide by a standard, and that standard is standard of managing and leadership in Petrofac. So what is the Petrofac way of managing, for example? So I think all of these little bits contribute to the moments of truth that an employee experiences. And at our company, over the last 5 years, we have done so much. There's suddenly been this revolution about being employee-centric. We have created employee forums now, which quarterly meet the board of directors and present to the board of directors the key things that employees want to talk about and ask them, which has never happened before. We now have promotion committees. So, in the past, people used to be promoted based on decisions made by one or two key managers, higher up. Now there are promotion committees at different levels in the organization, where there's a group of managers who come together, discuss, and decide on promotions, for example. Recently, safety being our number one value, recently we have tied up with the International SOS organization, which is a massive organization for travel and security across the world. And they provide emergency evacuation, they provide healthcare facilities at the tip of your smartphone. You have an app, and no matter where in the world you get stuck, whether it's the deep end of Mexico or the jungles of Colombia, as long as that app works and you're able to send out an SOS, they will find you and evacuate you. And they do simple things also. So a colleague of mine had come down from UK and promptly fell ill. He was staying at the Jumeirah in Garhood. That's in Dubai, for those of you who might be familiar. And he didn't know where to go. He didn't know which hospitals to go. And it was a Friday, and he just didn't know what to do. All he did was click on that app, and within 15 minutes, International SOS found him an appointment with a doctor at the Wellcare in Garhood, which is like literally 5 minutes away from the hotel that he was. So now employees know that the company cares, and it's promoting that safety value again. It's living by it, right? Lifeworks is another application that we have just launched for the well-being of employees. Now, this is a host of counselors, trained psychologists and psychiatrists available to employees, any employee, and also the employee's family. So if a family member needs to get some counseling done, you can actually go through the employee, and Lifeworks will help you, and Petrofac will bear the cost, right? Which, a few years ago was unheard of. It's suddenly now coming into, people are getting these wake-up calls, companies are getting these wake-up calls that everybody is watching in the world. And to attract and retain the right resources, you've got to be able to communicate and show that you are a caring company and you care about what people's experiences are like. You want employees to talk well about you, and the only way that will happen is if you create these wonderful experiences for them. So plenty to do on culture especially, but there's so much to do. It's so exciting when you get down to build cultures, and I envy startups especially because they they start greenfield and they have this absolute opportunity to build whatever kind of culture they want. And and I have been rejected by certain startups simply because I'm on the other side of 40, because they're very clear the culture has to be 30 and under. So whatever that means, right? So that's their decision and their prerogative. Absolutely agree with that. But that will create a different kind of culture. Similarly, a mix will create a different kind of culture. So that's my take on it. I think people should think very deeply about the kind of culture they want to build, because that will influence employee experience. It will directly influence what they achieve. Very, very important.
Such a wonderful word, culture. And, one is, it always, the pearl culture, that analogy always comes to my mind, because you can have your artificial pearls, but the real cultured pearls take time. And it has to have the right environment. And so, Neel, transitioning, you could add what is happening in your organization, and you could talk about environment as well.
I think
before that, I would just like to tell you one thing, that even for Noor, once when we started as a global Islamic bank, we had a branding. Then in 2014, we had to do one more set of branding. And finally, just a couple of years ago, we did another set of branding. And so there, the purpose was the first time that we brought in purpose. And the purpose we brought in was to make a difference for the better. That's all. So I was a brand champion, and we took sessions for the entire organization. I mean, we were some 28 of us. So we had to establish purpose, saying, when will the purpose be achieved? So it's a rhetorical question. So we would say the purpose would never be achieved because you're always looking for improvement. So that was something I enjoyed doing. And as you said, values and the behaviors, we would define them. And finally, it should be translated into your performance management, where what I have achieved and how I have achieved. Both have to be given with specific instances. I just can't say I was customer centric. No way. What have you done? Prove it, evidence, testimonial, etc. So somewhere over time, people start even focusing on saying that, oh man, for my performance appraisal, I need to build something robust to prove to my boss that I am customer centric, that I am collaborative, that I am agile, I am innovative, I'm a man of integrity. So it takes time, but it's worth the effort, and then it sustains, right? People may come and people may go.
Correct. We in fact have introduced Oscar nights for our values. So we actually do an awards night, and we award people across the organization who have demonstrated these values. So we run a competition, and people send in their entries for the different values. Some even backed up by what customers and clients have said to them. And they provide us all of that evidence, based on which a judging panel of about 9 judges across the organization globally sit and look at them, and then we do an awards night. So, reinforcing the values, as you pointed out, in the performance appraisals. So it's not just a set of words on a website. It becomes life.
That has really changed now. It's no longer just something that you put on the wall and people don't even look at it. Now they are forced to look at it, actually. And so much so, I wanted to also tell you that because purpose was make a difference for the better, we brought in a concept of, in 1 year, you get 2 days off to go on a project where you make a difference for the better. So during your entire day, you could go to an orphanage, old age home, or do something for society, and that would be recognized. So people started, getting the flavor that yes, this organization is beyond just making money. Like Tata Steel says, no, we also make steel. So I'm a Tata boy, so I have that great regard for Jamshedji Tata and the culture that he has brought in. It's amazing. The human approach, the infrastructure, the caring of the employees, everything makes it. I mean, I still feel so good about it. Neel, I could also talk till the cows and camels come home. Correct. Over to you.
How are we doing in terms of time? Because we are already at 3:20.
Yeah, I know, Israela. I think we're almost there.
Okay.
But just a couple of questions.
Okay,
Asif,
quickly.
I hope it's okay. Huh? Asif.
Yeah, so Neelji, you were going to talk to us a little bit about the environment.
And listen to it, but I think perhaps Israela, what are we doing on the time now?
So initially it's slated for 2 hours, so we are 45 minutes away from closing the session.
We should try and finish earlier.
Okay. So I was going to talk about the third not so interesting aspect of the whole employee experience, because Ganesh beautifully covered purpose as well as culture, which are the main components actually. The third component, which is also an important component of the entire employee experience, is actually the environment. Because when we say environment, regardless of the industry, whether it's banking or oil or construction or manufacturing or service industry, or the country that you are operating in, you need to focus on essentially 3 types of environments. One is the work environment as such. When I say work environment, it is about the tasks that typical employees perform within the framework of their work. The second is the physical environment itself. So physical environment is the interactions the employees typically have with their tangible environment, physical environment, which again, because of today's technology advancement, that is blurring as well, because many people are now working from home. And the third is the social environment. When I say social environment, it's not just the water cooler conversations with which you engage with your colleagues or your rest of the teams, but also the interactions employees have in the social environment within the organization, in the technological space. So it could be an intranet, it could be a social media application that has been enabled for employees to generally talk about work and share information, share knowledge. So these are the 3 typical environmental aspects that we need to be looking at in order to enable a better employee experience. So when you're talking about the physical workspace itself, it is not about replicating something that Google or Amazon has done. Put some beautiful colored, change the wall color or put some bean bags out there. It's not about doing those gimmickal kind of work, but also look at how people are design it in such a way that it enables communication, enables ease of access to the information, to communication, to documentation, and so on. So we need to ensure that the environment, physical environment, is flexible enough for them to work better across teams. Can it facilitate a kind of a cross-functional information flow and interaction? It doesn't have to be about big investment in your physical workspace, but just think about some of the smaller things that you can do. In fact, in Shapoorji, Pallonji, my company here, we have something called the quiet area in every office. So it's a very simple thing to accomplish, and essentially it gives every employee some time that you can take away from your typical, you're looking at a computer or you're looking at drawings or a planning document. You just feel tired, you have a quieter space just to chill and relax and then come back. So there are simpler things that you can do in order to enhance the physical workspace so that it enables better engagement. Social platforms, I quickly spoke about some of things that we can do to connect better, share knowledge, receive insight, and even question. And if I have a safety concern or a likely safety incident, we should be able to take these as early warnings before an incident happens. So it's important for us to propagate or promote interaction within the colleagues. It's not just about having open offices. Some of the leaders say, it is my doors are always open. You can, but how well do they actually encourage, let's say, a person, an office boy, to come into their office and air something? Maybe it's not about a grievances or anything about a problem that he or she is facing, but it is about adding an idea, coming up with an idea. So we have to ensure that there is a social platform that is available for them to openly express ideas, concerns, and so on and so forth. And there are tools that help you do this. It's not about tools and technologies that we have to, it is not about investing in a new tool or technology. Use whatever you have currently, not just in knowledge industries, because there it is much easier for you to use tools to improve your work environment. But even in the other industries, use of some of these tools have drastically changed where and how we do our work. So just having these tools is, of course, not enough. We need to keep asking questions such as, is whatever that we want employees to access, whether it's a policy document, a procedural document, or anything else, is it easily accessible? And is it reliable? It is timely? Are these easy to use? And is that experience seamless? Or do I have to keep knocking at somebody's door because this information is only privy to this particular department, and I wait for the answer from that in an email after 3 weeks? Look at how you can make it seamless and easier for your employees to access information, and that in a way enables employee experience. I'm talking about the environment point of view, and there is no frustration or even disengagement that happens as a result of not doing any of these.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. Again, would like to ask either of you about what's happening in terms of physical spaces. Are we reducing costs post COVID? And then, how is it affecting the balance sheet?
Yeah, because if you look at it from two different companies, as a company which is into constructing workspaces and constructing commercial complexes and work complexes and buildings, of course, it is going to be a disadvantage because more and more organizations are now realizing that they have too much office space, and many of the work can be done from home or from remote places. So that is, from that company's point of view, it is going to be a cost advantage. And more than cost is of course a big factor, but more than cost, it is also the flexibility. Employee doesn't have to, let's say, if you're looking at a place like Mumbai, where a large part of your time is spent in commuting, you save a lot of time. So I'm doing my work, I'm logging in at home, I have the flexibility to take a little break here and there. I don't have to be physically there. So that impacts the physical space to that extent. So those companies are now looking at probably downsizing from a physical space point of view. But it cannot be the same for every industry, because if you're a manufacturer, of course, you can't replicate that in reducing your workspace. But in many knowledge-based industries, I think this change is already taking place, or rather in the next few months, we can see that change. Real estate is going to have a big impact as a result of these actions. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah, thank you. And Ganesh, now that we've discussed the importance of EX and core components, the moot point is, how do we get there? What are some of the practical ways of implementing it in any organization? Yes, I know you have, we've all touched upon it in different ways. Would you like to give us something more on that?
I think when you start thinking about implementation, you've got to first understand what is the employee experience that your people crave for. And it's more important now to revisit that. You might have done a little bit of this expectation gathering earlier over the years, but all of that in today's times has been turned on its head, quite honestly. So if you look at it, you go back to Maslow's theory, and those of you who remember Maslow's theory, companies and people, slowly had progressed to the higher echelons of that pyramid, are now back to square one. So we are looking to revisit your physical needs, your basic needs, your safety requirements. Those have to be addressed first, for example. So I think it's extremely important for companies to first find out what is the kind of experience your employees are looking for. That's multi-generational again. I keep stressing on that point because what I want is going to be very different, I believe, from somebody who's 20 years junior to me, younger to me, let me put it that way. So understanding that is important. So find ways to extract that information. Now you could do that. Obviously, there are plenty of tools available to do that, including, but do not neglect one-to-one talks and do not neglect forums, and bring people together to collectively think about what is it that they want, which is what, as I said before, our employees forum is expected to do now. The interesting bit is this employee forum was not created by the senior management. It wasn't even created by any one function. People were elected democratically across the group, across 29 different locations in the world, to come together and form this group of people. So there is representation from all parts of the company. And now they meet the board of directors and they put forward whatever the employees are expecting and what they want to know. A recent example is, of course, all companies have done cost cutting, I believe, in the last 6 months. Employees have had to take salary cuts in our organization as well. And one of the pertinent questions that I think all employees were thinking about was, all these cuts have dragged me to where I was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, even sometimes 10 years ago. I had a friend call up and say, look, I joined Petrofac about 4 years ago, and today I earn less than what I used to earn when I joined. So, and these are real problems, and people are worried. People wanted to ask questions, and the forum is a good way to do it, because individually we can't. There's no way. Who do I go and address this question to? Because my boss has also taken a similar cut. What's he going to say? So the forum was able to put this forward to the board. And the board took the opportunity to explain that, how the cutting has happened, what the senior members of the organization have taken as a cut, what the rest of the organization has, what we see will be the impact, how long this is going to be, and took the opportunity to reassure people that, as soon as business turns around, we're likely to go back to whatever pay scales you were at, etc. But I'm saying expectations need to be known, and you can put together such teams, you can put together surveys, you can do one-on-ones, but you've got to essentially find out what kind of experiences people are looking for. A lot of our organization suffers from health issues. Okay, so many people are diabetic, many people have cardiac issues, and so before people have been invited to come back into the office, we have run a company-wide survey to find out what their expectation is. Will they be willing, and if they suffer from any health issues. So based on these two pieces of information, the Health and Safety Department has identified a small percentage of people who they believe can come to the office and work. The rest of the organization is still working from home. Right? Again, it's an example of how expectations can be managed, how expectations can be elicited. You need to find out. A good example actually is how schools have done here in this part of the world. They've asked parents, what is it that they expect? Are they willing to send their children, or are they so fearful that they don't want to send? And therefore, what should be the experience that the school creates? So schools where I live in Sharjah, for example, have created 100% online environment. So that is the expectation that has to be met. That is the experience they want to give. Teachers, therefore, have understood how they have to prepare and the kind of experience that they will have. So understanding expectations is important. The commitment from somebody senior, as we have said before, finding that minister of employee experience in the company is important. I think a focal point who can drive this under the auspices of whose office all of these activities can be done is very important. A framework is important. I think framework starts with values and culture and behaviors and things like that. But a framework is important. So you look at every step of the employee journey, in my opinion. So let's say you pick up the pre-hiring stage. A simple example of searching. Now, if you look at searching, how different people search for information about the company and where all they would go and search. If the company decides that I have got to make sure a positive impression is created at every place that a potential candidate is going to look up my company, then that drives a certain set of actions. It drives a certain set of targets and certain types of performance indicators. And that becomes an achievable goal, a SMART goal for me to be able to do that. So that's just one example in the pre-hiring stage. Let's say the hiring stage, and we are looking to create excellent experiences for our potential candidates. Now, the experiences could be 5-star experiences, like sending a limousine to pick up a passenger of a business class in Emirates Airlines, right? Or just a phone call to say, please come on this particular time, and we give you the invite. Or making sure there's a parking space available in front of the building for the potential candidate to come and drive up and come in, right? Whatever. So a Ritz-Carlton experience is very different from, I don't know, a Jumeirah or a Rotana or even a 4-point Sheraton, for example, right? But the company decides what kind of experience they want to be able to achieve based on what the employees want and the potential candidate wants. So different types of candidates will require different experiences. But unless you sit down and put it on paper and think about your stakeholders, think about what kind of people you are going to be recruiting and understand what is the kind of experience they would be looking for, you won't be able to address it. So that kind of research and that commitment and that perseverance is important to understand that every function wants to give a superlative experience for its potential customers, which are employees basically. So that is the only way that you can eventually achieve this. Every moment of truth, there will be millions. Every moment of truth has to be thought of, and you've got to decide what is the experience that I want to give. and therefore what is it that I need to do to achieve that.
Yeah.
And we'll come to the effectiveness and measurement later, but just to even get started, even though it sounds very onerous, if every function were to just take it upon itself to draw its own journey of how an employee interacts with them, and we've done this in OD, we have understood what are the different touch points of organizational development for the employees. And at every point the employee touches any moment, whether it's a system in OD, whether it's a person in OD, whether it's the physical premises of OD, or whether it's a document from OD, what is it that they should experience? So some principles, as Neel had pointed out, ease of access is a principle. I want to give that experience to the individual. Feeling, service orientation. So that is something that we want to give people, that they have been provided a service. We want them to be happy about contacting OD. We don't want them to think twice before contacting OD. We want to make sure they are 100% satisfied. So these are some principles that we live by within our department. Now, if every function were to have a set of these, standardized, then the chances of getting a holistic experience for your employees is great, I think. But the effort involved is what perhaps puts people off. So break it down and do it in chunk sizes, bite sizes. And as you achieve more and more, you get small wins, then you feel confident about doing more.
Correct. And the point, Ganesh and Neel, is again, what is the correlation between such wonderful initiatives and business results? That has to be communicated constantly, or how does that happen? Because one is it's a beautiful marriage of the head and the heart, right? So what happens? And I also am very intrigued to know, now post-COVID, are targets being revisited, given the constraints and travel being not possible, and innovation is going to take some time? Realistic targets, or how is it working out? I would like to know, because finally it's the bottom line that counts.
The bottom line definitely counts, and any such effort requires some investment. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars or anything like that, but it is time more than anything.
Yeah,
right?
Sorry, I just want to. Good, you preempted that. I wanted to ask you: is EX a costly affair? Are we going to get a return on investment? What are we going? How are we going to do this?
See, I can talk about some of the things that I have experienced while working in Emirates for almost 16 years. Last few years ago, we embarked on this EX as a concept, and I can talk about my experience being part of that core team that was responsible for some of these initiatives. So definitely what we started off was with the end in mind. What is the end goal? The metrics need to be decided even before you embark on this change, right? So any initiative that applies to pretty much any initiative corporate-wide you're trying to do. So for companies, it may vary. It may be about revenue generation. Is it about driving growth and profitability? It could be about reducing cost or attracting and retaining talent. It could be any such corporate goal. Whatever is your strategic goal, you need to make sure that it is aligned, because at the end of the day, you're answerable to the senior management in terms of how this has really brought in business success. So as with any initiative, even employee experience as an initiative, because it's not a project with a start and end date that you can show that, okay, now we have something to showcase. This is a continuous process. However, you should be able to measure it, and we can talk about measurement later, but you should be able to clearly identify as to what is the success metrics that you want to showcase. So in Emirates, what happened was we started with, the first step was to set up a cross-functional employee experience team. So from IT to finance to HR to field sales to functional units, frontline staff, included even the voice of your blue-collar workers at the airport, the ones who are pushing the trolley, or ones who are helping with the wheelchair attendants and so on and so forth. So we had a cross-functional team that was held responsible. That was the first step. And then, interestingly, this is also another emerging topic in most of the business circles, design thinking principles. So we applied design thinking principles. Essentially, it is about borrowing from the thought flow of designers, their work process. It's about, main thing is about certain people-centered or human-centered techniques, applying those in order to solve your problems in a creative and innovative way. That is, in a nutshell, what design thinking is all about. So what we did was we initially trained all the cross-functional teams who were put together for this initiative on design thinking principles before we started on to the next steps. So main thing is to have them listen to the voice of their colleagues, because they're all representing different teams and different people. Empathy and people centricity were the key. So it took a series of workshops to get people aligned with this process of design thinking. And then the third step we did was to segment all the employees at various functional and various levels, and looked at the touch points. As Ganesh said earlier, we have many touch points which are very different for different people. However, we need to consider what are the moments that matter the most for most people. So we looked at that. What are the critical touch points that we need to be focusing on, which is common across the board? Considered the experience of the entire workforce, because pre-hire is important. From the candidates coming in, full-time people, part-time people, freelancers, even ex-employees. Look at all the experiences of the entire workforce and try and identify what matters to them most in these touch points. Is it about simplicity? If it's about simplicity, clarity, meaning, do they just want to be heard? So this is the data collection stage by segmenting employees. And the next and the bigger part was leveraging analytics. And this is where, whatever shape or form the data was coming from. It could be from ERP, it could be from learning management system, it could be from the corporate portal, employees, dropping in suggestions in a physical suggestion box, etc. So we had to actually collate all this information and make some sense out of it, and then kept iteration on continuously improving the process. So some of the outcomes that came out of this, because it was initially driven by HR, rather facilitated by HR, we took one of the aspects of HR itself, because it's touching every employee, as the first focused initiative. It's about transforming HR, transforming and co-creating solutions, not just from HR, but from this group of people from across the board. Some were brand new, and some of them were radically expanding on the existing options. So I'm just giving you, in the lack of time, I'm just giving you few examples. So we had set up this self-service kiosks at various touch points within the organization. So in the past, because Emirates Group, was having about 80,000 plus employees, and many of them were based in Dubai. So for any document, bank-related documents, your visa-related documents, your immigration-related documents, loan-related, you still had to go and get a physical copy. So what we did was put together this kiosk at various buildings where the employee can go in and log in and print out a sealed paper-based document, which can be given to an immigration or bank and so on and so forth. We also had apps co-created by workers, by people from not just IT team, but in different teams, they created an app for creating these tokens, because before you go into the physical HR service center, suppose I'm working in an office in Sheikh Zayed Road, but I have to come all the way to Dera, to the other side of Dubai to come and wait. My half the day is gone. So what we did was the app was created by the employees for a tokening system. So I can apply and online through my mobile before I take the appointment for 11 o'clock, and my work will be done within the stipulated time. So that was another example. We had one of the other outcomes was collaborative platform called Talk Central. This is about airing your views and talking about issues, as well as good things that have happened to you and celebrating success. We had an improved, we had already a reward and recognition team called Bright Ideas and Najum, etc. But it helped us improve that, because some of the things that people were looking for were addressed through these, employee experience as a collective team. Flexi pay, benefit structures, these are some of the things that came out of people, which we slowly started implementing. I don't think we were successful in implementing the entire list of changes that people wanted. We had hackathon challenge, etc. Even CSR related activities. We had Emirates Airline Foundation and Donata for Good as two different entities, but these were driven by a group of people. Now it is actually empowered every employee to be able to contribute to it and take a greater ownership of those CSR activities. And we also had a lot of people in this region, mainly expats, getting into debt-related problems. So we had debt management support and counseling provided to people across the board anonymously, so that they feel secure. Wellness counseling and a whole list of other things emerged as a result of these design thinking workshops that we did. And it's about hearing the voice of the employee. Some of the things that we couldn't really address, at least in the time that I was there, was many people were disillusioned with this whole appraisal process and the appraisal system. So we used to have a different performance management system, which was Oracle based. Now it is a SAP based system, but essentially the core elements remain the same. There are some progressive companies which are completely doing away with the typical performance management system and replacing it with something which is very, very dynamic, and and that is something that we have not yet embarked upon, but something that I'm sure Emirates Group will be considering in the near future. What are some of the other examples as a result of this design thinking that we did? The onboarding experience was already great, because when I joined many years ago, I had a great onboarding experience, but it is getting even better. Right from the time that you get as expat, you get your air tickets. We now started including e-learning before you start joining. So you get a good idea of your team, your job role, your responsibility, as well as some technical knowledge that you come up with before you join the organization. This way, you are actually minimizing the effort and time involved after you join the organization. That is one initiative that came out of this. In fact, we are also leveraging the in-flight entertainment system by providing learning. This is available to all the customers, but also to the new employees who are embarking on their first maiden journey into Dubai to come and join the organization, and they can even get learning some leadership principles or business behaviors, etc., online, even before they come on board. Once you arrive, there is a beautiful greeting from the Marhaba team. We arrange for the visa services. The medical tests are now more streamlined, family care related. So many accommodation, driving license, and making it easier. Like we said, go back to the basic principles. What is it that the employee needs? Not the bells and whistles, not something that is magical. Take care of the basic needs and do it well, and that is where I think we succeeded in a great way in terms of making the onboard and the initial experiences better. When it comes to my current organization, there's a lot of focus on wellness and retention of employees, because there is a great that is again trickled down from the senior management and the chairman, and what they value the most. It's about the wellness of the employees, because we have an extensive workforce which is blue collared. So we do give very special attention to our deskless and non-wired employees on the site. There is this Speak Up initiative. I mean, here we didn't do it as an employee experience initiative like we did in Emirates. I'm talking about some of the smaller steps that we have taken in order to enhance the experience of the employee. So Speak Up initiative is something that we have done recently. This is about just like I think in Petrofac's case also, safety is paramount, and it's important for people to be able to trust that the information they share is kept, and people really value that, as opposed to brushing it under the carpet, because a safety incident on a site can lead to huge damages, both to people as well as the company in terms of revenues and cost. So they need to know that they can voice their true thoughts and feelings without any negative repercussions. This is where the culture and the way the management deals with this information comes into play. For this, there needs to be a healthy dose of trust as well as the respect throughout your workplace, because it's not just about what will my manager think, what will if I point out to this mistake, maybe the HSC person will be upset. No, it is not for your own good. It is not only for your own good, but it's also to ensure that the organization thrives and there are no incidents or accidents that is waiting to happen.
Very true.
Yeah.
Ganesh sorry, Neel. So as you said, the fact that you made it easy means literally a month's salary. The person would have been spending so much going out and getting things done. So it's actually the time is money that way. So before we get into the question answer, just like to ask Ganesh and you about any key measurements that you would like to point. Is this possible? Is this such a holistic concept? Is it measurable? Do we need an index, or how does it evolve, or is it evolving? And then we move in quickly to the question and answer session.
Yeah, measurement. Sorry, I will start with measurement.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Ganesh. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So no, I was just going to say that in the examples that Neel provided, I think everywhere there's a set of key metrics that are decided upfront. What is it that you want to achieve? And KPIs are, I think, very familiar with everybody, I'm sure, in the audience. Pretty much all companies, small and big, use key indicators that will suggest success or otherwise. So I think that's important. You don't have to be, they don't have to be complex. They don't have to be very difficult to understand or measure. If simplicity is what you're looking for in a particular process, what will indicate that the process has been simplified? So if you were to think like that, you can come up with indicators which are purposeful and which are meaningful for the task that you're doing, right? So, for example, ease of access to information, and that you can find out how many steps it takes, for example, to get to a particular document. And that's an indicator that it's a leading indicator that you can look at. You can obviously surveys. You always go back to the employees to find out if their experience has been enriched, if it's better now. So we obviously do annual and biannual surveys, pulse surveys, to find out about different aspects of the employee experience. So we talk about immediate management. We talk about employee engagement. We talk about access to facilities, access to information, technology, etc., etc. So gathering feedback before and after is a very good way of understanding whether you've improved, and having key indicators which are meaningfully tied to what is it that you want to achieve. That's
Fair
important.
enough.
So retention is a big one for us in terms of understanding if employees are happy in the organization. So voluntary redundancies or voluntary retirements, or people leaving, voluntary turnover. That is a key indicator for us to suggest if people are happy or not. What is it that they're looking for? How many people have been promoted in the year, and how their career paths are looking over the last 4 or 5 years is a good way to see if people are getting the growth that they aspire for. So I think if you look at what you're trying to achieve, it's going to be fairly easy for you to put a target there and see if that target is being achieved or not.
Yeah.
Great.
In my view,
Thank
I think
you.
we should go beyond surveys because that is what typically many organizations do, and my organization also does that. Maybe they are looking at the increasing the frequency of surveys, but in my personal view, I think we should go beyond surveys and focus more on the insights that come out of different, throughout the year from employees. Take advantage of other sources, your ERP,
Absolutely,
your LMS,
absolutely.
work
Couldn't agree
system,
more.
Infonet, even Glassdoor, for that matter. So we need to go
Absolutely.
beyond just data collection and create some accountability for insight and actions, and so that we can link that to the greater goal that organization is looking to connect this to. So that way we should be able to, measure that in a continuous basis and be transparent about it.
Couldn't agree more.
Or bad.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So how about a final poll and question and answers, Ezrila?
Yes.
Could we extend it by 5 minutes in case the system allows?
Yeah, I think we have about 6 questions. Maybe we can take 3 of them and we can respond.
Could we have the poll? Could we have the poll now? Thank you. Could perhaps time for let's see what people say. Wow, that's nice. That's really nice. So there's definitely not likely is ruled out. Somewhat likely is still very encouraging, and 71% is very, very good. It just gives us, the validation that all of us have always known, but after such interaction, we understand the importance of EX and its direct link with business and results, because it is not something nice to have, it is a must have thing. So question answers, Ezrila, one thing I think, Asif, I just thought, because this is such a beautiful subject, we could keep a focus group, and we are always there to take it offline, continue the discussions. We feel part of Adrenalin family. So it's not that this webinar is over and we are not there. So we are always there to help you, or to even give us some insights into how we've done it across organizations. So let it not be over with just this webinar. What do you say?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Brilliant. In fact, I am yet to get out of the adrenaline of the session. And I believe that, I started with saying that, customer experience and all that. I think the employee experience at the rate at which the session has gone comes a little tad higher than the customer experience. And I think that's what drives the customer experience. And the element of culture which Ganesh had hooked into as a framework to adopt to creating a culture in the employee experience organization. What Neel has said about design thinking as a method to empathize and create an experience basis the employees. I think all this were wonderful. I think Ramnath, you have done a wonderful job by extracting this from these two gentlemen, plus of course your contribution itself. So Ezrela, I think you should take the questions on.
Yes. Would you like for me to read it out, Ramnath? Is that okay?
Yeah, and the panelists, you can take it up.
Yes. So we have a question. What can you do during COVID times to keep the experience EX going, given the work from home scenario for most organizations?
Good question. Good question. Very relevant, topical, contemporary.
Absolutely.
Ganesh,
So,
you want to go ahead? Yeah.
Neel, would you like to go first? Okay, I'll go
No,
first.
go
I'll
ahead.
go first.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think depending on the size of your organization and the size of your teams, the way we are managing is we have broken this large task of keeping employees engaged during this pandemic into smaller tasks, and by that I mean every manager is taking personal accountability to make sure that people who work with him or her are, number one, safe and secure, number two, doing well, number three, are able to contribute productively and efficiently in whatever they're expected to do. So I think the responsibility is down to every manager who is managing either a small team or managing a group of people or even a group of tasks. So that's number one. So weekly meetings, I think, have suddenly taken a new dimension. It is less about what work is lying ahead, which we used to typically do when we were at office, to what's happening, how you're managing your kids. Your kids have started school. How are you supporting them? Do you need any support? Is there any pieces of work that we could distribute around? Somebody else could take it. So these are the types of conversations now we are doing, and these are simple conversations. These are genuine conversations, which tells me as an employee that my well-being is more important to the organization than anything else at this point in time, which I think has to be the absolute truth.
Yeah.
You cannot in these times have work prioritized as opposed to an individual's well-being. Well-being has to come first. And I get that sense from my managers. I also create the same sense for the people who work for me. We keep the interaction going. That is important. Being available at all times to listen is very, very important. To be available to support is very, very important. I think if you're able to achieve these two things, then we can tide over it. Volume of work will get done. People, when they feel healthy, can contribute well. And the flip side of COVID is there are no fixed hours. So in fact, we work more from home, and we work. Yesterday at 1 o'clock in the night, I was responding to emails, which is crazy. I would never have done had I been going to office. But that's the way it is now. But I'm willing to do that because the company is flexible with what I do right now, and I have confidence that they are taking care of me, and they will take care of me. So I think as long as we're able to give that sense of assurance to employees, we should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I don't know, Neel, whether it is so appropriate. I think you have to give us that emotional bit. I thought you read between the lines. Please tell us quickly.
Yeah, well, in terms of the COVID scenario, as far as my current organization is concerned, we are pretty much like the previous times because of the way that we work, except for a few pockets within the organization where people are given the flexibility. Having said that, and I think the point that Ganesh made earlier about, you truly care for every employee, that is what counts more. It's not about talking about productivity, because if you ask any construction leader, they will only talk about productivity, productivity, productivity. But I didn't see my MD talking about that during this time, because he was concerned about people's well-being, and that resonates with every employee in the way that they are treated. And I can give my own example, because towards the end of May, I had tested positive for COVID, because we were not on lockdown. We continued to work. So I was coming to work. I don't know how, despite all the precautions, I had tested positive for COVID with mild symptoms. So what happened, I'm talking about, the care the organization gave to me. And later I realized, even for other employees who are blue collar workers, was about the support during these times of difficulty. Almost for a month, I couldn't come to work. I was tired, fatigued, but I still had work. And they said, don't worry about work. Just look at, improving your health, because that is what is important. Work can wait. So not that every person should be able to get this, but we really truly believed, what the MDs had to say, because my colleagues checked on me. My MD every day would send messages to my wife, because I was not taking calls at that time, to check on my well-being. And even during a brief stay at the hospital, the continuous support was what made me feel so happy that I'm part of this organization. I'm sure even other colleagues, because when I came back, I came across a couple of other people who had also, tested positive, and they had similar experiences. It's not just that it has been extended only to certain managerial cadre. It has been extended to every single work person on the site in any office. So that is something that we need to ensure. And during these tough times, your true value system comes into play, because there's no point in just talking about, your McKinsey or your PwC can come up with your value and framework, and in every training program you talk about that. But living those values and demonstrating those values from every employee comes into play during these difficult times, and that is what leaves a very lasting impression in the minds of employees.
Wonderful. And I would just like to add that, see, you can always infuse learning for them, because, like e-learnings and webinars, these are opportunities to upskill them. So that is one thing it's going to really help in the long run, because you're building capability. And so, you could have focused programs given to them, LinkedIn or whatever else, or technical, it could be, etiquettes, whatever, which is going to help once things get, come back to at least near, say, normal. They are better equipped now. Yes, Ezrela, next question.
Many companies actually have, found out that the learning hours of employees during these last 6 months has actually quadrupled, as an average across countries. So this is a great example of employees wanting to learn, and the organizations providing them with the flexibility to learn without having to be in a face-to-face environment. So that's a great example of productivity.
People are creating their videos, Udemy's, the works. So people are also getting creative. So it is really a very good thing. And besides, of course, downsides are always there, but family bonding, empathy at home, resolution, mindfulness, patience, so many positive things are also happening. Nature is becoming benign. I mean, there's much to learn from this pandemic. But yes, we are all got used to such a standard of living and lifestyle and socializing. We'll have to introspect about it. Yeah, Ezrela, next question.
We'll take probably one more question, because we're overshooting time here. So the question is, during this pandemic, how do we know that EX has not gone down, if not up? Is there any way to measure employee experience?
See,
Right. very briefly, all I would say is you definitely need to have a pre and a post, right? Because this question is about pre and post. So if you had measures already for employee experience ahead of COVID, then you can pretty much, definitively answer this particular
Absolutely.
question. This conundrum can be addressed. But if you have never done it before, and you really don't know what the baseline is, then chances are,
Yeah, what do you measure
you'll only
against?
learn something new, but you won't know if
Correct.
it is. Yeah, what do you measure against? So a baseline is important. Without a baseline, I don't think it would be possible. But you can start now. You can, identify what are the areas that you would like to focus on, and you can start small. You can focus on the areas that you have some influence on, some things that you can change. A simple example is infrastructure and collaborative tools. So you can imagine life without MS Teams and Zooms, during COVID. It would have been literally impossible for organizations to function, at least in the first 3-4 months where nobody came to office and everything was under lockdown. It would have been near impossible. So introducing in a company like that, when you introduce a collaborative tool like this and suddenly everybody becomes productive and efficient, then yes, you've contributed to employee experience. You can see that that's improving. So what would be the next step? What more can you do, etc. So that's just an example I'm suggesting. But you need a baseline before you can suggest if you've improved.
Absolutely. Because you start with the end in mind, because it's not something that you suddenly start and or you retrospectively measure something, because you don't have anything to base it on. Having said that, if you're starting afresh in terms of, okay, how do I measure how my employees are feeling right now in terms of their experience? Other than sending them reports, or rather asking them to enter information for their company dashboards for performance and productivity, add a couple of questions related to how they feel, how's their experience, what kind of a support that we are giving you, and what kind of a support that they expected and we didn't give. I think, adding these little questions as part of your weekly dashboard or weekly reports, etc., will go a long way in actually, getting that feeling from the employee that, yes, you're not only worried about my productivity and the outcome, you're also worried about, how I feel and what are some of the measures that you can take to make my experience better in these times.
Thank you. This is such a wonderful subject. We could literally go on and on. But my takeaway is that, employee experience is like going from being a frog in the well to the totality. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, as they say in Sanskrit. And 3 quotations before I hand over to Asif is, Julia Bevacqua says, in order to build a rewarding employee experience, you need to understand what matters most to your people. Then we have Mr. Richard Branson. The way you treat your employees is the way they will treat your customers. And customers are revenue. And finally, Dennis Lee Yon, she's a brand leadership expert, speaker and author. Customer experience and employee experience are now 2 of the driving forces of business. So it all comes back to where Asif started from. And it's been such a pleasure being with Adrenalin Xchange and such panelists who have a wealth of experience and insights and are so sincere about sharing it. Time is always the constraint. And thank you, Ezrella. Thank you, Smita. Thank you, Udit. Thank you, Rahul. It's learning for us. Even an intervention, a panel discussion, the platform, how to use these things, everything's learning. I am much richer by this experience, and I'm sure my co-panelists have also. So our heartfelt gratitude on behalf of Ganesh and Neel to Adrenalin Xchange, and it's over to Asif.
Thank you, Ram. I can't agree more with Richard Branson. I think, as I said, we came back to the same point of customer experience, and now we have started saying that, okay, without employee experience, I don't think so there is customer experience. So thank you, Ram, Ganesh, and Neel for
So
your
serendipitous. How it came out beautifully. I think it is like divine. We never planned it out, right?
yeah.
So beautifully it connects. Yeah.
We hope our audience are taking back a lot of key learnings, and I did. And it's not just the simple thoughts. It's the experiences that you had, the body of experience which came out, which is excellent. And I think it'll go a long way in fostering the culture of employee experience. Thank you once again to all of you, and thank you for the wonderful audience. We look forward to hosting more such webinars, as Ram did mention, the Adrenalin Xchange webinar. We are excited to create more such thought-provoking subjects for the benefit of all. Thank you very much. And Israela, is there anything that you would like to say and close the session?
Yes. So when we close the webinar, a survey will launch. It's just 2 questions. We just want to know your thoughts. So attendees just take 2 minutes to just pen down your thoughts about this webinar, and what are the other topics that you would like us to bring you such webinars or discussions. So it'll just take 2 minutes. So please fill out the survey. And this Adrenalin Exchange is the first session in this series. And it has been brought to you by Adrenalin E-Systems Limited. It is a global HR digital solutions firm. Do stay tuned for our next webinar announcements. Until then, take care, stay safe, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Israela. And please, those other questions, we are more than happy to, if you could take their details, we could get back to them. And as I said, please form a group, and we are always available for, to give some of our views. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And all of you, please be safe and have a great life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
So,